Will Manchester United's new owners be Qatari private investors? What I'm going to do in this video is give you a full summary of everything that's happened in the last 24 hours, linking, as I said, private investors from Qatar with a huge full takeover of Manchester United, not a minority, a complete and full takeover. I'll explain the story, how it's developed, the complications of Qatar and PSG, how that all sits in, how it all ties in. I hope I'll be able to summarize it all for you in the next 10 minutes so you don't have to read everywhere, because it's a very complicated situation. Please, if you do maybe learn something from the video, please consider dropping a like on the video. It does help the community. I'd love to have you on board, so make sure you subscribe as well. But let me dive straight into this. Now, the story was broken by Mike Keegan from the Daily Mail on Tuesday night when he said this, that Qatar investors will bid for Manchester United within the next few days and are confident of blowing any competitors out of the water. Then down there it says the same thing. Qatari investors are planning on an incredible bid for United and want to give Ten Hag the financial backing to lead the club. In more detail, he's saying there, look, that sources have disclosed a group of private high wealth individuals based in the oil-rich state buoyed by Qatar's hosting of the World Cup have set their sights on Manchester United and will make an offer in the next few days ahead of the mid-February deadline set by the Glazers and the Rain Group. We know full well that bids are going to be coming in. They're going to be coming in February. And that I suppose is why this story is coming out now. One potential stumbling block, of course, is QSI's ownership of PSG. And I will speak that in a little bit of detail. The bid for United will come from separate individual Qatari investors. So many big words, keep getting confused. But for a full roundup of what that initial article from Mike Keegan said, it was the idea that they want a quick conclusion, quick purchase. Now, the family, I'll speak about the actual worth of the Al Thani ruling family in Qatar. 8 billion, that's not a problem for them. 6 billion for the purchase of United, 2 billion for reinvestment in the squad, in the stadium, in Carrington. Apparently, the Emir of Qatar is a big United fan. Don't know whether that's just paper guff or not. And the idea that fan engagement will be at the heart of it. Yeah, okay, who's believing that? But Mike Keegan's followed that up with this latest report this morning, saying Qatar investors targeting United are confident that PSG's ownership will not cause any issues with their bid. Saying this, however, there is an area which is being examined by experts and they are separate from QSI, and the money will be in the shape of an individual fund rather than a sovereign wealth fund. And there is a confidence that Qatar's ownership of PSG will not cause any issues. And that's the full story as we know it. Now, the Al Thani ruling family, it has to be said, well, we know full well, they are rich. They have a lot of dough, worth in excess of $330 billion. But what has been said here is that we are looking at private investors from Qatar. I fully expect us to be having the same conversation. If this is going to be happening and Qatar private investors are coming forward, I expect there also to be private Saudi investors to come forward as well. And we may well be having the same conversation later in the week about them, because this won't be necessarily directly the Al Thani family, because that would cause conflict with, of course, PSG and Qatar Sports Investments ownership of them. Now, the Al Thani family, remember these reports back, maybe you don't. Back in 2011, reports suggested that they wanted to buy Manchester United. I believe that was before that was probably the same year they actually did buy PSG. So this is not the first time that we've had links with Qatar, and we know full well what's happened over the last, well, few months in particular, but Qatar has invested heavily in football. I think they spent in excess of $200 billion on hosting that World Cup and everything to do with it. They are very much aware of the power of football, and they want to use that to better their image in the Western world. Now, we also know full well that Manchester United, well, specifically Abraham Glazer, he's been in Qatar multiple times. I'm just here to watch the football. I can't help but do that impression every time. I'm just here to watch the football. He was never there to just watch the football. He's been out there on more than one occasion. And The Athletic has also done a separate article here. This is on Qatar Sports Investment. He was saying this: sources close to QSI, who asked not to be named, have confirmed to The Athletic that there is an interest in buying Manchester United. So that's even from the QSI perspective. Now, if this goes any further, I absolutely expect David Beckham's name and face to pop up at some point. But David Beckham, who was, of course, an ambassador for Qatar at the World Cup. But I think the most important and prevalent point for us to discuss here is QSI, is PSG, and how can this possibly work if Qatar and QSI, well, Qatar Sports Investment is the state's investment arm for sport. So it's effectively the same thing. How can we talk about Qatar owning Manchester United if they already own PSG? And it's that distinction between Qatar buying Man United and private investors buying Man United. And it's the same thing that's going to be happening if Saudi Arabian private investors go and try and buy Manchester United as well. Because, of course, the Public Investment Fund, they own Newcastle. So Saudi Arabia as a state, they own Newcastle. Qatar as a state, they own PSG. So technically, according to UEFA rules, they can't own more than one club. Now, QSI, as I said, they own PSG. Now, the Qatar Investment Authority and QSI are both linked to each other, if I am correct. Now, Ben Jacobs, who's a freelance journalist, said this. He goes, to clarify, QSI would not be directly involved. They remain committed to PSG. But Nasser Al-Khelaifi, he also sits on the QIA board. And all of us, as I said on the live stream this morning, we're smart human beings. We know full well that even if it's private investment from Qatar, it's going to have links to the state of Qatar. They would have done that with the blessing of the state in the same way that it would happen and would have the blessing of Saudi Arabia if Saudi Arabian private investors came forward. Now, this is the rule that everything is linked around. This is the UEFA rule here that says, look, member associations shall ensure that neither a natural nor a legal person exercises control or influence over more than one of their clubs whenever the integrity of any match or competition organised at member association level could be jeopardised. And I would probably point towards this. I would point towards what Red Bull have been able to do with RB Leipzig and RB Salzburg. I'm just here stating the facts for you. They've managed to find a way. It's obvious, I mean, they're both under the Red Bull brand, but they have separated the ownership levels enough that both of them can compete in the Champions League at the same time. So it is achievable if you have the right structure inside football clubs. So I don't personally feel that anything here to do with this Qatar bid would be halted by Qatar's ownership of PSG, because it would be private investors, and according to the legal books, it'll be different names, it'll be different owners, it will be different. Even if ultimately you follow the money trail and it all led back to Qatar, that wouldn't cause any problems, I don't think, from UEFA's point of view when it comes to the ownership. Now, something I do want to say, and it's something that we all know and we all fear now, because FFP is a conversation this week after Man City. Well, this was coming, but they were charged. They were caught, finally, pants down, and it's something that they've been doing for a long time, and they've been playing their books. But we have to remember where Man City were when Abu Dhabi came into where Man City are now. And look, Man City's revenues are now the highest in world football, which genuinely just cracks me up every single time I talk about it, think about it. It's just wild that they ever thought they were going to get away with it. But look who's fourth. That's Manchester United, before we've got any new owners in. And this is a big, big thing, because our revenues are already nearly 700 million euros. We don't necessarily need as much investment as City. Of course, we need major investment in the stadium in itself, in Manchester United overall as a football club, and in terms of transfers and everything that's going to be happen going forward. But the scale of investment is not anywhere near the same as Man City. They were turned from basically a championship club into Champions League contenders. We are a sleeping giant, and we still are a giant. We still are one of the biggest three clubs in world football. So that for a lot of United fans, that's why the idea of any sort of takeover by any state, be that Qatar, be that Dubai, be that Saudi Arabia, be that Kuwait, any of them, so many are diametrically opposed to it. And I've sort of explained this in my video that I did this morning, the live stream. Back when Abu Dhabi bought City and we fought against it as United fans for so long, the landscape of football was very different. What's happened since then, started by City and Chelsea and accelerated by PSG and Qatar, and now with Saudi Arabia and Newcastle, the landscape has changed. And it's very, very difficult to compete at the very, very top if you don't follow that. Is it a trend, or is it just the way that football's gone? I don't know how to describe it, but that's the full story here, currently linking Qatar and, private investors in buying Manchester United. We're looking at a full takeover according to reports, and a huge bid in the next coming days. So I will bring you updates on that as and when it happens. You can let me know what you think about Qatar ownership of the club, Qatar private ownership. I will reiterate that. This is the first time that we've heard this. Anything before with QSI and Qatar Sports Investment has been to do with a minority investment. So I was warning everybody against that, because a minority investment from anywhere, even Jim Ratcliffe, anywhere is a horrendous idea, because that means the Glazers maintain control. But what do you think about Qatar? What do you think about the idea that Saudi Arabia could follow them? You can let me know what you think in the comments below. And make sure, as I said, you do subscribe if you're new. But this story is going to continue to develop rapidly. February is going to be a crazy month when it comes to our new owners.